Good morning, and welcome to the March Health Spot honoring Women's History Month. In recognition of the hard work and accomplishments of local female leaders, today's presentation, Black Female Executive Directors of Nonprofits, includes panelists who are providing administrative and managerial oversight of community organizations serving the New Orleans area. For those of us who have been around for a while, it's important to acknowledge that the face of executive management is becoming more inclusive and diverse. This webinar will explore the journey of what it takes to break through the glass ceiling in the nonprofit world. Today, the Health Spot team includes 2 student interns, Carrie Mulder, who will be managing the technical side of our event, Jeremy Parks, who will drop information from the Empowering Change Task Force specific to women's issues into the chat, and myself, Dr. Deirdre Hayes, co-chair of the Empowering Change Task Force. Our esteemed panelists include Rashain, Carriere, Executive Director of Boys Town, Louisiana, Thelma French, President and CEO of Total Community Action, Incorporated, Renisha Robertson, Executive Director of Covenant House, New Orleans, Voris, Vigee, President and CEO of Volunteers of America, Southeast Louisiana, and Dr. Rosanne Adderley, Associate Professor at the Tulane University School of Liberal Arts, who will be interviewing our panelists. So welcome, 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 and we are excited to have you, and let's get started with this very important event. We can start with Thelma French, who will tell us a little bit about TCA and what they provide for the community.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for the opportunity to share a little bit about Total Community Action, known in this community as TCA. Total Community Action is a 57-plus-year-old nonprofit organization that was birthed out of the 1964-65 War on Poverty. Community action agencies are charged with providing opportunities, experiences, and supports that assist individuals with low incomes to achieving economic security and self-sufficiency. Traditionally, when you talked about TCA in this community, the first thing people would say is, you pay our light bills. The second thing they would say is, oh, you all provide Head Start. Over the last 15 to 20 years, we have worked hard to expand the community knowledge of the array of services and supports that we offer to support individuals and families achieve economic security. We're one of the leading providers of reentry supportive services, youth development services, we do water assistance services, but we also have been on the cutting edge of the whole family approach to addressing intergenerational poverty. So I am proud to serve as the 4th Executive Director, President, CEO of Total Community Action, and the first female in that position. If I am to talk a little bit more about my organization, I'd like to talk about how I got involved in Total Community Action, which is part of the pathway to becoming a CEO. I had the privilege as an executive assistant to Mayor Mark Morial to sit in the mayor's seat on several boards and commissions, and one of them was Total Community Action. The work of the anti-poverty movement that began with President Kennedy and was actually brought to fruition by President Lyndon Baines Johnson was the birthplace of sustainable economic support for families and children with low incomes. Many people do not know that Head Start actually was birthed out of the war on poverty as we sought to make opportunities for families to get skills. It was addressed that there had to be a place for childcare We have come a long way from childcare. We are now early childhood experts and spend a lot of our efforts and growth in making sure that the first 1,800 days of children's lives are stimulated for that positive growth throughout their childhood. The other part of the work that is important to me is the youth interventions and support. We must be responsive to our communities. And so while there are 42 community action agencies in Louisiana, I'm proud to say that I have the privilege of leading the award-winning most innovative community action agency in Louisiana. And our innovation is tied to our responsiveness to the changing needs in our community. We stepped up and became the Group Violence Reduction Strategy core case management organization 7.5 years ago. And we were able to not only link or work with these young men and women who were at high risk or of being murdered or committing murder, but we were able to wrap around these services around their entire families and networks. And our data and the national data reflects that and I don't like to use the word success. I like to use the word, our outcomes exceeded the national averages of Dr. Kennedy's work in all 7 states that he was currently working at. And I attribute that to being a member and a leader of a team of committed professionals who bar no efforts to really intervene and support individuals in their progress. And I feel like the proud mama. And so sometimes it's hard for me not to just to call out names and to attribute this thing, but TCA is only as strong as the team that works at TCA. And we have the average length of stay of individuals in this organization has changed. When I came on, the senior leadership was an average age of 72 and had been here over 30 some years. The average age now and the average length of stay is 15 to 20 years. But we're proud that as young people gather their resources, experiences, and take advantage of the training opportunities, that they move up and they move out. And I think that is truly living the mission of community action. So while I could go on and on about total community action, I would like to stop at this point and allow some of the other panelists to introduce themselves and talk about the wonderful organizations that they lead.
Thank you, Thelma. I think we would be remiss not to say that Thelma is a mentor to many of us. And so I really appreciate you joining us today to share your knowledge. Next, we'll have Boris Vigee from Volunteers of America.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Voris Vigee, and I currently serve as the President and Chief Executive Officer for Volunteers America Southeast Louisiana. And Volunteers America has been a footprint in this community for more than 126 years. We've been serving all types of vulnerable individuals within our community. We have over 20 human service programs, including housing and behavioral health services. And this organization has helped over 61,000 people in the 16 parishes in which we operate within this past year. Our Ministry of Service has not only supported and empowered Volunteers America's individuals we serve, but also some of our community's most vulnerable individuals, including veterans, seniors, at-risk youth, men and women returning from prison, and individuals and families experiencing homelessness, and people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And we also tend to work with individuals who are experiencing substance use disorders. Our work in this particular community touches the mind, the body, the heart, and the spirit. And ultimately, we we thrive to ensure that we are integrating and we have a deep compassion for the folks in which we are providing these services. Our programs are highly effective. The people who go out into the community, our frontline staff, as well as our professional staff, are very dedicated and committed to our mission. And these individuals have shown and proven their level of commitment through their years of service with the organization. I, for one, have been with Volunteers America for 27 years, and I have been working with this organization alongside of some very dedicated and mission-focused and solution-focused individuals. One of the other areas that a lot of folks are not clearly aware that Volunteers America provides services in is housing development. We have a subsidiary named Renaissance Neighborhood Development Corporation. And we're proud to provide over 1,000 housing units to residents across Louisiana. And that includes seniors and working families, individuals who require a little bit of support on the financial side with subsidies. We provide and develop those housing units. A lot of folks may be familiar with Elysian Courtyards that sits across from Dillard University off of Gentilly. That's Volunteers of America. Terraces on Tulane, a senior housing facility that has a very nice pastel palette. That's Volunteers of America. Down on Chapatoulas Street, 1770 Chapatoulas, whereas we have housing as well as our Fresh Food Factor program that caters meals to schools for breakfast, lunch, and snacks. That's Volunteers of America. And if you live in the Covington area, Groves on Mile Branch, those apartment complexes, that's Volunteers of America. And so for those individuals who have not been down or haven't recently gone down to the Bayou in the home of Terrebonne community, Academy Place and Bayou Cane, those housing developments. One is for seniors and the others are for working families. We built those, we developed those because we believe in investing in the people within our community. So we have a myriad of programs from birth to elderly that a lot of folks aren't clearly aware of. And we're going to do a better job of ensuring that folks know what we do so they can benefit from the services in which we deliver. We have an adoption and maternity program in which we work with birth mothers and families, couples who are interested in adopting. We also have a Mentoring Children of Promise program where we work with youth and children who might have an incarcerated parent or parents, or youth who are at risk, or youth who just need a mentor. We require those mentors, if you're interested, in order to provide mentoring services to you, at least 2 hours of your dedicated time. In the past, we've had several Tulane University students who have committed to paying it forward and volunteered their time as mentors. We also have our Veterans Program, and this is where we provide transitional housing for veterans who are experiencing homelessness. We have 56 beds. We have 2 facilities uptown, our Oscar J. Thomas facilities. One is located on Napoleon Avenue, and the other one is located on Pitt Street. And this is an opportunity whereas we support those who have ensured that our freedoms continue to exist. And we provide them with wraparound supports and services from case management to counseling to employment services. We do those things in order to ensure that they are able to successfully reintegrate into the community. We also provide housing for individuals who are experiencing homelessness, whereas we're able to provide temporary financial assistance for rental housing, whereas we're able to assist those individuals to obtain permanent housing, along with some supportive services, specifically case management, benefit management, making sure we're educating the people in the community that we're serving about benefits that they are due. We also work with our individuals who have intellectual developmental disabilities. A lot of folks don't know we have 7 group homes across the greater New Orleans region. And that's where we provide supports, 24-hour supports to these individuals so they can one day live independently in the community with minimum supports. we have a supported living services program, and this is where our intellectual developmental disabilities population live independently in the community. And we provide those services where we have someone to go into their home and support them that way that they can have the quality of life that they so deserve, like you and I. We also have our Fresh Food Factor program, which I previously mentioned, and that's where we provide meals to individuals who are in school, the students, breakfast, lunch, and snacks, along with the co-packing business. For those of you who have never heard of Jambalaya Girl Jambalaya, and for those of you who have heard of that, well, it is packaged by Volunteers of America. And you can find that jambalaya in Sam's grocery stores with the Sam's brand on it. That's part of Volunteers of America as well. So, number of programs, folks dealing with opiate issues. We provide supports on behalf of the Florida Parishes Human Services Authority. And we work in the communities on the North Shore, ensuring that we're doing positive outreach to folks and making them aware of how they can get their needs met. And then we also have our program where we focus on those people who are trying to successfully reintegrate into society, our correctional facility residential reentry services. We are very proud of our recidivism rate there at that particular facility. When I started providing management and support to the staff there, our recidivism rate was a little bit below 10%. Today, it's a little bit below 5%. And as you all well know, the state recidivism rate is well over 40% today. So we're proud of the services that Volunteers America delivers, and I'm proud to work alongside of 500 plus employees. We are one of 30 affiliates across the United States. We have a Volunteers America Incorporated office that provides us with technical supports. We're able to be as innovative and creative as possible with our service delivery model, because if there's an affiliate across the country that has a model that is innovative, we're able to take that model and adapt it to our community. No sense from starting from scratch when you have a support of a network across the country. So I'm going to leave you with this. Our Renaissance Neighborhood Development Corporation, which is our housing development arm. If you didn't know, you'll know today. Volunteers America across this country is one of the largest housing providers, housing developers. So that's a tidbit fact information. So thank you. And if you have any questions, you can place them in the chat.
Thank you. Next, we have Rashain Carriere from Boys Town.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Dr. Hayes, for inviting me. I'm very humbled to be a part of this amazing panel of women in celebration of Women's History Month. I'm Rashain Carriere Williams, and I'm the Executive Director of Boys Town, Louisiana. Boys Town, Louisiana is an affiliate site of the national organization known as Father Flanagan's Boys Home. We provide a vast array of services and programs that are evidence-based for vulnerable youth and families. So I'll take the next couple of minutes to kind of talk about Boys Town's history, how we came to be here in New Orleans, and the types of services that we provide. Boys Town started in Omaha, Nebraska by Father Edward Flanagan in 1917. Over the course of about 30 years, Father Flanagan's Boys Home went from a farm for wayward youth and boys in the Omaha region, several sites across the country. Yes, we are the famous Boys Town from the movie that starred Spencer Tracy and Mickey Rooney, that kind of really talked about the history and where we started. And that movie was in 1938. In the following decades, Boys Town expanded not only from Omaha, Nebraska, but throughout the country. Presently, we have 10 sites across the country. And in 1989, Boys Town, Louisiana opened here in New Orleans on Frenchman Street. We were known as the Greenhouse back in the day, if you remember. And currently, our National Executive Director is Father Stephen Bates. I am, like I mentioned, the current executive director of Boys Town, Louisiana. We are most known mostly for our residential services. Our mission is to change the way America cares for children, families, and communities. However, even though we are mostly known for residential services, I'm going to describe a lot of our programming and actually most of our programming where we serve the largest number of individuals is through our community-based services. So I'll describe those as well. So our flagship program is known as Family Home, known as, in the community as group homes or residential facilities. Well, we call them family homes, and that family is very important. It's a long-term program that focuses on family style living in a home setting for girls and boys. I want to emphasize girls because we do serve girls as well, ages 12 to 17. We hire married couples who live in a home with the kids to provide them with the example of what family life is like. The family teachers also have assistants that come into the home to help support the home as well. The youth that we serve are referred through the Department of Children and Family Services, our foster care community, or we may also receive referrals from the Office of Juvenile Justice. And those are kids that are in the juvenile justice system, and they come to our home as a preventive piece to keep them from being placed in detention. The average length of stay in a home is 12 to 18 months. Our homes are in the community. If you were to drive down several major thoroughfares in the city, there'll be a Boys Town home. There's no signage. There's nothing to say that it's a facility or a group home because it is a home, it is a family. That's part of our model. That's part of our evidence-based model. It's intentional. Our kids go to community-based schools. They're involved in extracurricular activities. We make sure that if they have any special needs or need any kind of special services that they see outside therapists. But that family style environment, the relationships that they build in there, the skills that we teach to our kids in the home, that's our model. That's how our kids get better. An offshoot of that program that people may be a little bit more familiar with is our Intervention and Assessment Center that is on the West Bank. It is residential in nature as well. We serve a similar population, the Office of Juvenile Justice youth, the Department of Children and Family Services youth, and we also have a small grant from the federal government to serve runaway and homeless youth. It is residential, but it's short term. So those kids stay in the program 30 to 60 days. And these are a lot of kids that are in crisis, that are in transition. They may come to us out of foster care because they have disrupted their placement, and they may be able to go back to their home. However, we like to utilize a continuum as well, meaning that kids can leave our short-term facility if we assess them, and if they're a good fit, then we can move them on to our family home program. So that is our Intervention and Assessment Center that some people may also be familiar with. However, maybe about 14, 15 years ago, at assessing our community, we realized that we really want to affect change preventatively. So trying to prevent kids from being placed outside of the home in the first place. So starting in Jefferson Parish, we're able to secure a contract with Jefferson Parish to serve kids with one of our community-based models, which is called In-Home Family Services. So In-Home Family Services is a program where we train consultants. We call them consultants. Some people may call them case managers or case workers, but we call them consultants again for a reason, and that they partner with families. So we are families are referred through the court system when there is a youth that may be on probation or getting into trouble. What we do is we train our consultants to go in the home, working with the entire family, despite if only one child is deemed quote unquote at risk. We assess the family. We help to build a healthy relationship with the family, and we ask them what their stressors are, and we create a service plan around those stressors. Our goals is to partner with the family so that they have a healthy environment for their children. We focus on their strengths. We focus on helping them improve their parenting skills, developing problem-solving skills, improving communication, accessing community resources, and achieving basic goals. The program is focused on early intervention and prevention to help families solve problems before they develop into a major crisis. Another similar model, we have the In-Home Family Services program that focuses on the parenting, and we focus on skill building. A similar model where we also go into the home is care coordination. Care coordination is a case management type of service. And again, we train our consultants, again, because they partner with families, to provide them with linkages, supports, helping them to navigate systems, It's a pretty, like I said, case management type of model. Our goal is to stabilize the family, to help the youth, to equip them with skills, to help them be successful in school or vocation. We link them to needed services such as mental health, legal, the health system, and we also help them gain stability to set them on a trajectory to completing their goals. Again, like I said, those programs is where we probably serve a good third, 1/3 of our population. And then we wanted to get even more preventive in the last few years. And so because of that, we started looking at the early childhood education system, right? And so we were able to successfully apply for and receive a grant for early Head Start education, early Head Start program. We started that program about 7 years ago with the goal of utilizing Boys Town's evidence-based model. So what we did was we wrote into our grant where we're able to provide the care coordination program that I talked about, which is the case management model. We're able to integrate our in-home family services model. So every family that comes in, we are able to not only meet the child's early childhood education needs, but we assess every family. And if a family presents with problems or stressors that need to be addressed, they're immediately referred internally into those programs. We have a partnership model with the Early Head Start program, which has also been a great learning curve for us, but also a great partnership in that we partner with 4 private childcare centers. We were able to partner with 4 high quality centers to place our early childhood education youth into. Like I said, we have a strong parenting and family model approach to working with all of our families so that they get holistic care while they're in our programs. One other program that we also provide is Common Sense Parenting. Common Sense Parenting is an evidence-based, skill-based curriculum, which is 6 or 7 sessions where we're training and teaching the parents parenting skills. They learn about early childhood development. It's in a group-like setting, so parents are able to learn from each other and support each other. And that curriculum is also integrated into our early Head Start program as well. So that is the gist of all of our programming here at Boys Town, Louisiana. People just see us as a group home. They also see the word boys and don't realize that we serve both boys and girls, but also that holistic approach and that one child may bring the family into the program, but we're working with the entire family, even in early Head Start. If a newborn is in a crib at a center, but there's a mom who's struggling with homelessness or struggling with trying to provide for her family, we can provide support for that family. If there is a teenage child that is struggling in school, we can wrap around services for that child and help that child be successful in school as well. So that's the gist of most of our programming. As far as my history with the organization, I have worked for Boys Town for 18 years. That's hard to say because those years went by very, very quickly. But I definitely started off in programming. So I was hired in what Boys Town had at the time was an administrative training program where I was able to go to Omaha, Nebraska and be immersed in the origins and the history of the organization. I was able to train on all the systems of Boys Town and really learn our evidence-based model and the research and science behind it. After I finished that program, which was about 6 months in length, I was able to return back to New Orleans and I worked in programs. So I worked in our residential program. I was able to be involved in program development when it came to our community-based programs. So I helped in-home family services to Boys Town, Louisiana, care coordination to Boys Town, Louisiana, and definitely early Head Start a few years ago. And then over the course of 18 years with my knowledge and what I acquired, I was able to become the executive director about 3 years ago. So I'm relatively new in my role. I started in 2019, the second half of 2019, and then a lot happened in 2021 that really helped me to grow and to develop. And I'm just really excited for what's on the horizon for Boys Town. The next thing that we really are trying to look at, as I talked about, we're known for our residential programming. Kids do really, really well in our program. Our outcomes are great and amazing, but we really want to be able to expand our services for when our youth leave our residential programming and what aftercare looks like for them. So are they set up for success? Do they have stable housing, workforce development, vocational training? So that's going to be on the horizon for Boys Town, Louisiana. I'm excited to help us to expand and grow in that area. So I will allow time for our next panelists to speak. Thank you.
Hi, all. Renisha Robertson from Covenant House will speak, and following Renisha, Dr. Adderley will do her presentation and begin the panelist questioning session.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Hayes. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. I'm really honored to be a part of this amazing and esteemed panel. As Dr. Hayes said, I'm Renisha Robertson, the Executive Director of Covenant House New Orleans. Covenant House New Orleans is one of 30 affiliate sites that make up our federation, Covenant House International. Our sites span across the United States, Canada, and Central America. Covenant House New Orleans has existed in the New Orleans area for over 33 years. We serve youth ages 16 to 22 who are experiencing homelessness and exploitation. And also we provide emergency shelter and support to individuals of any age on an emergency basis who have experienced sexual assault, domestic violence, or human trafficking. We are most recognized for our 24/7 open intake emergency shelter. That's how most people in the New Orleans area know about Covenant House. And while that is often the first way that young people interface with our organization and how most people know us in the community, we also provide a number of other residential services as well as other supportive services. We also provide transitional housing, both on site at our campus at 611 North Rampart Street, and also in off-site apartments. And we also provide permanent supportive housing services for youth who are at risk or experience chronic homelessness. Our housing programs are operated with wraparound services that address the multitude of challenges that our youth face. And those services include programs and services such as mental health services that are trauma informed. We also provide medical care through a partnership with Tulane School of Medicine. We provide education, vocational training services, and also workforce development programs. And we do that on site with our staff, as well as in partnership with a number of organizations that serve youth through vocational training programs in our community. We are staffed by a very dedicated and committed team of professionals at Covenant House that operate our programs and services. It takes a large team to operate a 24/7 emergency shelter and all of the programs and services that we provide. Currently, we have over 85 staff that operate all of our programs. Most people in our community never really get to see behind the courtyard that that you all may have seen on Rampart Street, and get a true picture of what happens behind that courtyard and behind those doors. And so, I would love to just give you a sneak peek at our campus and introduce you to some of our staff and services and young people that we've served through a virtual tour. So I'm gonna stop talking on camera and you'll actually get to see me in just a second talk about and take you on a little tour of Covenant House so you can see a little bit of who we are behind those doors, what we do, and what it looks like for young people who access our services.
Okay, I have a shared screen. So I hope everyone is able to see it, and I'm going to start it. And let me know in the chat if you're not able to hear the sound.
Hello, and welcome to Covenant House New Orleans. My name is Renisha Robertson, and I'm the executive director here. Covenant House New Orleans has been serving youth facing homelessness for over 30 years, right here on the edge of the French Quarter in the heart of the city of New Orleans. Today, I'm gonna take you on a little tour. When youth first arrive at Covenant House, we often bring them here to our 24/7 emergency shelter. Come with me, I'm gonna take you inside.
Here we are in the Care Center. Let me introduce you to Mr. Ed and Ms. Van Trell. Hey guys, how you doing?
Fine, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Mr. Ed is a longtime volunteer here at Covenant House, and Ms. Van Trell is the director of our Care Center.
Welcome to Covenant House. All the youth that come through our doors are welcome with no questions asked. We provide immediate services, meaning showers, meals, clothing, medical if necessary as well. We work really hard with our partners to provide 3 meals a day and a snack.
And we serve people from the ages of 16 to 22 and families, and all the services are free.
Thanks, guys. Now I'm going to take you upstairs to take a look at one of our rooms.
Here we are on the 3rd floor of our Care Center, which is our boys' floor. At Covenant House, we really tried to create an environment that is safe, supportive, nurturing, and inclusive for all of our youth. And so our youth get to decide which floor best fits their gender identity. Now we're going to take a look at one of our rooms. A typical room is dorm style, which means we have 3 or 4 youth living together. And so our staff really tried to create an environment where we respect their privacy and their space. Here at Covenant House, we offer so much more than just a bed for the night. We offer case management services, health and wellness services, and other supportive services such as education and vocational training. Come with me, we're going to take a look at our education and vocational space and meet some of our EdVoc staff. Hi, Miss Jane.
Hi, Renisha. Hello, everyone. So this is the Education Vocational Department, and here we support our youth with obtaining employment, entering into a job training program, as well as enrollment in high school, college, or HiSET. We also do financial literacy, which is part of life skills, and healthy relationships.
Great, thanks, Miss Jane. And we have one of our alumni here, Grace. Hi, Grace.
Hi, my name is Grace. Miss Jane and Covenant House helped me grow so much. I'm currently at University Medical Center as a psych tech. My goal is to be a nurse in psychiatry, and if you're looking for a forever family, Covenant House is it.
Thanks, Grace. We're so proud of you. Now let's see what else Covenant House has to offer. Here we are in our Care Center Lounge, where youth have space to just hang out and relax. They also can access our free on-site clinic in partnership with Tulane School of Medicine. Tawana and Mr. Eddie are going to tell you a little bit more about our clinic services. Hey guys.
Hi, Ms. Rheneisha. As you know, I was once a resident here at Covenant House. I am now serving on the board of directors. The Covenant House actually helped me land my very first job here at the clinic. I am now working to achieve my goal of becoming a nurse so that I can help others the way the Covenant House helped me.
That's fantastic, Tawana. It's good to see you. My name is Mr. Eddie, and I'm the nurse practitioner and clinic director here at the clinic. We like to see all of the residents of Covenant House within 72 hours of their intake for their physical and behavioral health assessment to help them get the help that they need.
Thanks, guys. You know, many of our youth have faced a number of challenges and have experienced trauma, including human trafficking. And so we try to work really hard to bring in specialized services for our youth survivors. We also advocate for anti-trafficking policies and practices. Now we're going to take a look at the rest of our campus. Hi, Miss Ebony.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good. We're here with Miss Ebony, who directs our 2-generation program for young families.
Hi, everyone. Our 2-generation program offers best practice, whole family approach, case management that are designed to better support parenting skills and offer moms and babes opportunity for social and emotional support. Aligned with our health and wellness and commitment to that, 2Gen also offer opportunities where mothers and babies and young families can bond and form positive memories.
Wow, thank you so much, Miss Ebony.
Thank you.
We're gonna continue on our tour and visit our Rites of Passage program. Come with me. After staying in our care center, many of our youth take advantage of the opportunity to stay here in our Rites of Passage program, which offers them a lot more freedom and flexibility. Our ROP staff work with the youth to help them develop skills in budgeting, meal planning and preparation, and self-advocacy for effective conflict resolution.
86% of our residents complete the ROP program with stable housing and employment. We've made it to our final stop, our Wellness Center. Here, our youth can take advantage of a number of wellness activities, including individual and group therapy sessions. We also have a number of fun activities for our youth to participate in, including yoga, movie nights, painting, and even music production. Well, we've come to the end of our tour. We hope that you've gotten a glimpse into what Covenant House has to offer. Our dedicated staff are here to provide you with the highest quality of care and support. So whether you're a young person seeking services, whether you're interested in volunteering opportunities, or whether you're just interested in supporting a worthy cause, Covenant House welcomes you with open arms to our beloved community. Thank you for all your support. Take care. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you, Carrie. So I hope that you all enjoyed the virtual tour and learned more about all that Covenant House has to offer our young people who are facing insurmountable challenges. We at Covenant House really believe that our young people, even through their most difficult circumstances, can overcome these challenges with unconditional love, absolute respect, and relentless support. And that's what we try to provide through all of our programs and services and all of our interactions with our young people. I've been at Covenant House just a little over a year now, and it has been such an amazing experience to be at Covenant House and a part of Covenant House leadership. And I would love to talk more with you all through the discussion and Q&A about all of our work and what we have in store as we move forward to continue to evolve as an organization, as the needs of our young people evolve and expand. So thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the question and answer section and hearing more from you all if you have any questions about Covenant House. Thank you.
Dr. Adderley, you can begin.
Yep. Thank you, School of Social Work, for having me. It's not your cameras, it's mine. My Tulane computer has decided that it too would like a spring break. I'm here mostly because it's Women's History Month to give us a little bit of context to why we brought these women leaders together. And I'm going to try to keep my context brief, and then we can move into some Q&A with our panelists. And because it's Women's History Month, I do get to drag us all the way back to women's history. And a fun with fact that I did not know until prepping for today. Some of you may know that in the United States, we sometimes debate the big political movement to think about women's rights back to the 1840s and this pretty famous Women's Rights Convention in Seneca Falls, New York. What I did not know until prepping for today was, most of the reasons meetings like that convene is because women recognize that they don't have rights. But one of the big motivators for that particular meeting in 1848 was that a lot of white women who were involved in anti-slavery activism were also concerned with bigger questions of rights. And Elizabeth Cady Stanton and a woman who I think was Jane French, but I could be wrong, they traveled all the way to England to participate in a meeting that was supposed to bring together people who oppose slavery. And it was basically, if you run what we'd call an NGO against slavery, come to this big convention in London and we'll figure out how to take down this slavery worldwide. They get to the meeting and they're like, oh, no. Only men leaders of anti-slavery nonprofits are really invited to participate in this meeting. And that was one of their motivations for we're going to have to get organized around these questions. And I thought that was super interesting thinking about nonprofit women leaders today. And in a minute, I'll say a little bit more about how far we've come and how far we've not come. The other thing that you all may know is that the 1800s becomes a pretty ugly fight between Black and white activists over whose rights should come first. And I often tell my students, if you think we've invented these arguments, ha, 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 ha. You should see some of the real nastiness that went on in these meetings. A lot of it based on white activists who thought that African Americans were inferior or weren't sure where Black women fit in, Black men who weren't sure where Black women or men fit in. So all of these kind of classist and racist arguments about who was fit to do what and lead and participate. That's a bigger conversation that I'm happy to have it another day. But I want to highlight this for an important reason. Is that we are, well, two reasons. We are 150 years in to trying to understand these questions of sort of, particularly sort of women of color and women of color leadership and how to make equity mean everybody. I would say that the second thing though, that even in the middle of these ugly debates, and they were pretty nasty, that there was a sense that what we were collectively supposed to be about was advancing everybody's rights. And what we do that in both nonprofit and government sectors. You guys, I think we kind of missed it because of the pandemic, that somewhere in the middle of the pandemic, there was a lot of online celebrating of women getting the right to vote in the United States. The 100-year anniversary of that, which fell in 2020 during the pandemic. Now we all know, I think most of us are participating here, that it wasn't until 50 years after that, that with the Federal Voting Rights Act, that most African-American women can vote in safety. Also forgotten in that is that Indigenous women were totally left out. And it's not until 1924 that, Native women are told, hey, you can be citizens too after we've, in this country whose land we've run over. Interesting to where we are now as nonprofits and what we're talking about today is that we forget often today that between the 1940s and 1970s, there were pretty active discussions about, okay, women have the right to vote. What do we do to get women more enhanced in leadership in all roles in society? And as early as the 1940s, both the Republican and Democratic parties, which are very different from what they are now, were willing to think about putting the Equal Rights Amendment in their party platform. All right, so this discussion, it's old. And some of you know this, that the Equal Rights Amendment, we still don't have it. We got 35 states to ratify within the time limit set. And then in the 1980s, it died because you need 38 states to change the Constitution. We didn't quite get there. If you want to think about these women's leadership issues, though, I would encourage you to look not just at the United States, but I spent a lot of time looking at what is unwomen.org, and I might try to remember to put that in the chat or the Q&A, which gives pretty good data on where women are in leadership generally globally in this moment. And you can get up-to-date information on a lot of metrics. There's pretty sad statistics that some of you will have heard about how, like Fortune 500 companies around the world, women CEOs are still less than 10%. There's I think 195, 196 countries that are recognized by the UN, and there's still more than 30 of them where women are less than 10% of elected leadership. I wish I could say nonprofits were 100% better. They're better, but not by much. If one of the sites that I use for data on this is the University of San Francisco, which has, for those of you who are students, actually has a dedicated master's program in nonprofit leadership. So you can get an MA in nonprofit leadership at University of San Francisco. And some of the data that they put out is that women, which not surprise any of our panelists, make up 75% of the workforce in nonprofits in the United States. And of those women who work in these nonprofits, over half aspire to leadership positions. But if you look at the biggest nonprofits in the United States, those with budgets over 25 million, women leaders, still only 20%. So when it comes to running things, women's journeys are still, even in the nonprofit sector, are limited in ways that we would think we would have gotten further in 2021. And so I wanna sort of frame the conversation with our panelists about their experiences with those kind of numbers in mind. And I don't know anyone's budget, but I don't think anyone on here is running a budget of $25 million. But even, you can step down through the statistics for those of you that like that and think about where are we comfortable with women leaders? How have we allowed them to grow and thrive, and how do they make nonprofits better? So I want to sort of turn to our panelists and take my questions with that backdrop, all right, in talking about your own experience in this city. And the first question that I would like to ask each of them is to comment on the leadership history of their own organization, either local or national. And, please toot your own horn if you're the first woman or the first African-American woman to lead it. But also, what can you share about the mentoring process that got you to that leadership and where it fits in how, some of you are working in nonprofits that are solely Louisiana based, but what has been the mentoring process that's changed, that's got you to your leadership position? And also, what can you share with us about the leadership history in your own organization? Thank you, Boris, for that data. So you are in that number of the 20, it's less than of nonprofits whose budgets are over 25 million. We are still at 20% women of any background, let alone women of color, in those leadership positions. But I was wondering if each of you could comment on what your own experience rising into leadership, sort of how you got mentored to that position, but what you also know about your own organization, local and national, in terms of what its history is with women leaders. And I guess we can start French with you and go in the order maybe that we went. I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be better.
So I'll start then. And I think I am the dean of this group. I proudly wear my age, okay? I would begin with, my organizational budget does exceed $25 million. It is a New Orleans-based organization, but we are part of a network of 1,100 community action agencies in the nation. As I stated earlier, there are 42 in Louisiana, 21 are nonprofits, and 21 are parts of public government. As I prepared for this panel, I reflected back on the questions, and I can honestly say, as I thought back through my years coming up in the public sector and always working with nonprofits and educational institutions, there were no women CEOs or EDs or directors. That my role models, my mentors at that time, both male and female, were people who believed in building back the next generation and sharing. And if I take nothing back, it is that everything I've learned or can learn, I want to help someone else who is willing. The women that I had to look up to at that time were first Black state senator, Diana Bourgeois. I came up through public education, higher ed. I came out of grad school wanting to be a grants administrator, and my first job, all I can say was working on a grant. And I was working on a grant, it was called 8 college curriculum. And I bring this up because it's very interesting. That grant's intent was to reduce the attrition rate among Black college freshmen in historically Black colleges. The opportunities to work with the Fred Hamptons and the earlier Black college presidents, the mentoring and the challenging, I think set my course. After 8 years in higher ed, I had my first opportunity to work in a nonprofit, and I take my hat off to Rheneisha because I was one of I tell everybody, and Dr. Hayes knows, we came with the bricks at Covenant House. We were the first staff. But while I came from higher ed and had never worked in a direct service industry, I was demoted, paid $15,000 less than I made in higher ed because I had not worked in a treatment agency. And so the challenges have been to always keep my head high, to stay motivated, and to find people around me that supported and always challenged me to do better. So I'm going to stop at that point. But when I had to name and think about it, I had the Mary Josephs, who were the senior, who ran, well, it wasn't even TANF then, wasn't DCFS then, I think it was the Department of Social Services. I had a Madeline Bagnaris and a Gloria Bryan Banks, the first Black women to hold state cabinet jobs in the state of Louisiana. And my dear friend Mardell Cade, who never reached the rank of ED at Kingsley House, did become the first Black female ED at Covenant House, but who always was supporting African-American young women as we move through our journey.
Can we go to, I guess, Boris Vigee? And apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name. Sorry.
No, that's correct. That's accurate. So let me tell you all, just share with you a little bit of my history. I am the first female president and CEO for Volunteers America Southeast Louisiana, and I am the first African American for Volunteers America Southeast Louisiana president and CEO. The data is not alarming what Dr. Adderley presented. When we look at our 30 affiliate organization across the country, I am one of 19 female leaders. However, I am one of 2 African American female leaders for Volunteers America. And my road, my travel, my mentoring to this position, being with the organization for 27 years in varying capacities, I understand what it means to be frontline. When I started with this organization, I started off as a program coordinator working with folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I knew at that time, and my mother was my mentor, she understood back then the assignment, and she ensured that I understood the assignment, that in order to do what is necessary for the community at large, you have to ensure that your mind is strong, your heart is strong, and that your faith is strong. And having those 3 coupled, together as pillars in my foundation, and then coupled with determination and the willingness to learn and understand, do my own self-learning, was the only way that she knew and I knew, along with my father's support, that I was going to be successful. Knowing that you have to take a vested interest in your future, understanding that it's no one else's responsibility to help you on your journey. That responsibility is yours and yours alone with God's grace. Now, if there are people who are going to help you along the way, embrace it, welcome it, but it's no one else's responsibility. It is yours and yours alone to bear. So growing up with the parents and, father who was a politician, mother who was an educator, and believed in ensuring that you had the tools and resources in order to be successful. And one of the things she shared as a mentor, in which a lot of Black parents tell their kids, you got to be better than the rest. Well, we know that it's not, we know today that it's not that you have to be better than the rest. You just have to be your best, because, at the end of the day, it's how you feel about the work that you're doing in order to pay it forward in the community, in this nonprofit space. The leadership that it takes to run a nonprofit, we're not afforded the same graces. And so when you're sitting in this seat as a female African American, not just an African American, but a female, and we're celebrating Women's History Month, the road to success and the latitude for error is slim to none. So we have to be able to work together and work collectively in order to ensure the success of all of our nonprofit organizations in this community, and especially support our female leaders. Because having strong emotional intelligence, and that's something I've learned along the way from a mentor, is paramount. Is extremely paramount. And, because we don't want to be seen as the ones that, we can't make decisions and sound decisions because of the fact that we're not emotionally tough. Well, you know what? We're passionate about what we do and how we do it. So it's not about not having strong emotional intelligence, but it's definitely needed. And thank you all for having me here today because we have a big story to tell. I'm among several wonderful women on this panel, and there is a story to tell, and it's a hidden story that should no longer be hidden.
Let's go to Rashain, Cara Williams. In interest of time, I'm going to keep you in the order that you were, and the Zoom format is a little awkward for calling on folks.
That's okay, Dr. Adderley, and amen, Boris. As I reflected on this question, as I was thinking about it this morning, and I've been talking about it in other discussions about the idea of mentorship. And as I reflect on my journey, what has been essential for me, and I'm looking at Rheneisha right now, is peer mentorship. The informal peers that I've met in nonprofit and outside of nonprofit. I have lots of friends who are women leaders. They're at the top, they're executives in the sports world, marketing, real estate, and I lean on them. I learn from them. And I don't discount the fact that even though I'm in a nonprofit, I'm working with kids and families, and you're an entrepreneur and you're running your own business. We share stories, we both have staff, we learn from each other. And when I first became an executive director, I'm not the first. Mondale was also the ED of Voris, Louisiana as well. I'm not the first African-American female executive director. However, I did seek out, when I first was hired 3 years ago, female leaders, Black leaders, and I put time on my schedule. We met for coffee, we met for lunch. I did that for at least 3 or 4 months straight, and sharing stories and leaning on them. And to this day, they're a text message away, they're a phone call away. We still meet for coffee, virtual meetings when we were at home. And that's essential. That fuels me, that helps me, that lets me know that I'm not alone. And then again, it's mutual. And I mentioned Rheneisha as well, because, as we are, for instance, I can give an example of, working with boys and girls. We reopened our girls shelter and realizing that our girls home, and we've been, so focused on boys. I realized that we were missing an essential component when it comes to the issues that our female clients come to us with. So I was able to reach out to Rheneisha. We had another executive director that were having the same issues with the girls in her facility, and we all came together last week. That was vital for me, right? The relationship that I've been able to establish with other executive leaders, that's a support system for me. That has helped me grow, and I wouldn't be where I am without my peer mentors. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there that, I was trying to look and see if I had a formal mentor. No, I didn't. I did, reach out to people who in the community that I felt like I can learn from. Dr. Hayes is one of them, and it's probably the reason why I'm on this call today. But it's all been informal. I never had a conversation like, can you be my mentor? We didn't, put it down on a calendar, but I knew who to call. I knew who to lean on. I knew who to reach out to. And similarly within my organization, I am grateful to being part of a national organization. So I am able to reach out to the other executive director, female leaders or male leaders or whoever I want to. But I just found out that relationship was important. It was vital, and it's going to continue to contribute to my growth and development as an executive leader in a nonprofit space.
Renisha Robertson.
So this is why panels like this are so important, because again, I wouldn't say that we are the hidden gems in this community, but this is such an amazing representation of the wisdom, the experience, the expertise that we have in this community that has been here for generations. And I can say that Miss Thelma and Deidre and my colleagues, Boris and Rashain, have all been mentors and peers, colleagues, and friends for me. And just Miss Thelma mentioning Mary Joseph, and I remember being, a young graduate student right out of Tulane School of Public Health, and being mentored and guided by Miss Joseph. I'm fortunate at Covenant House, New Orleans, that I, come from a long legacy of amazing Black women leaders who have led the organization, Maudel, Kate, and also Deidre and Thelma in their leadership at Covenant House. Just a little data on Covenant House as a federation. I am one of 13 women executive directors or CEOs out of 19 leaders. And I think those statistics are impressive as you kind of reflect on what you've presented, Dr. Adderley. But I'm only one of 3 Black women leaders. And that just says to me that we as a federation have even further to go in making sure that we truly embrace and we are authentic in saying that representation matters. And not just representation of women leaders or women leaders of color, because while that is certainly my identity as a Black woman leader, there are many other hats and intersectionalities that I wear. And so that's why having the representation of us on this panel is so important, because we all have different hats that we wear, different identities, different experiences that we bring to the table that are important as we continue to lead organizations and guide communities, community development for generations to come. That representation is important. And so, I can speak to so many mentors that I've had through the years. I say that I was very fortunate to have, 17 years of my 20 plus career being guided by a Black woman executive director who not only steered her organization from what some might consider a fledgling organization to now multi-million-dollar institution, but during that time also focused that organization on truly mentoring and guiding and preparing other women, and especially women of color, for leadership roles in this community, nationally and internationally, and made sure that we understood our place in society, and our place in making sure that our representation was to amplify the voices of those who did not have a voice. And that's what I hope that, that I do, and what I represent for the women leaders in our community and beyond, and that we are truly paving a way, the way that women leaders in our community and our mentors have paved the way for us.
Thank you. I want to shift, and we knew we'd never get to all of the questions. So one of my fun jobs is I get to pick and choose. One of the statistics that I often like to give to Tulane students, because it shocks them, is when we look at women's leadership stats, whether it's politics, nonprofits, one of the countries that is just a rock star, all right, particularly in elected leadership, is Rwanda. And they're like, Rwanda? And I was like, the United States is like dragging their feet and bringing up the rear in comparison to Rwanda. And one of the things that happened in Rwanda after the genocide was that they actually made a law that when you're electing leadership at a national level, you have to elect a third of it as women. And if you don't, you have to actually go have another election. All right. And that is how, if you look at elected leadership in Rwanda, they said, what policy could be used to guarantee that we would nurture elected women's political leadership? And it also incentivizes down the chain. Like if you are a political party and you wish to advance, and you know that this is the, and I wanted to take that kind of very specific policy to the talent cultivation question. And I'll throw it to the open floor, if there's any policy within your organization that you yourself has enacted or that you can point to, because we have a good student audience and we've already got some questions about people who want to start their own nonprofits. This policy, like, we've noted, Boris and Rheneisha, you noted that the VFA and Covenant House are beating the national statistics on women's leadership, of large budget nonprofits. So if there are policies that either you have used to cultivate talent, or you're like, this is what really worked, I can see how that has been effective for cultivating, particularly the talent of women and women of color in these organizations. Are there policies that you can point to that you can say, boy, if people adopt that, that's gonna move some balls, and it's gonna help other, sort of other organizations get to where we are. And I said, I will throw it open rather than sort of going in rotation, which means that you can speak up and jockey for position in the Zoom square.
I would just say we don't have any formal policies. I think that's part of the problem. And and part of some of the work that we are doing, planning to do, as we're developing a strategic plan around diversity, equity, and inclusion in our organization and in our federation, that we want to codify some specific practices that may be informal in our respective sites. So, while we don't have specific policy, we are always reviewing our current talent and our human capital, and making sure that we are very progressive and that we are representing diversity and paying particular attention to ensuring that there is strong representation of women at the table and people of color at the table, and that we are making sure that that is a part of our hiring practices, that we have diverse representation of applicants in our applicant pool when we're hiring. I think another thing that we do informally is some intentionality in how we create a pipeline of talent from within the organization. So if we are bringing in diversity within our applicant pool and hiring diversity for the organization, then we need to be cultivating leadership when we identify leaders and potential leaders within the organization. And we need to create those opportunities to cultivate their leadership. And so we have an emerging leaders program within the organization. So when those individuals are identified, we're very intentional about how we train, how we provide professional development opportunities, how we mentor, how we guide, how we emphasize ongoing learning opportunities, how we cultivate that internally, and also making sure that we create those opportunities externally for those leaders. And we do that with a lot of intentionality. I think the next step for us as we continue to evolve is making sure that, again, this is not just represented by practices, because as leadership changes and there's transition with organizations, we want these practices to stay. We want to institutionalize these practices. So that's where policy is so important, because that's on the books. And unless you go through a formal process of changing those policies, then that's sort of written in stone to follow. And so it gives it a little bit more, it gives it, more than just intentionality. It creates, the path as we move forward.
I am very pleased to hear Rheneisha say that they're going to integrate DEI within their strategic plan. The intentionality is definitely very vital when you're looking at changing the landscape and ensuring there's access to roles of leadership. for female leaders. And we recently, and I say recent because it was within the last 9 months, July 1, launched our strategic plan for the next 3 years, and we were very intentional about ensuring that culture, diversity, equity, and inclusion was embedded all throughout. It is a pillar of our strategic plan. And the question was, is there any policy in which we've created to, ensure that leaders are being recognized, helping them along the way? We don't have a policy, but we have a practice. And so that DEI is interwoven within our practices for human resources. We have a task force that was recently converted to a committee that focuses on culture, diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's comprised of employees from all levels of the organization to keep us accountable as to how we ensure that leaders are being recognized, from observed, that their needs are getting met. We've had a program that focused on emerging leaders, and we're doing more of those conversations and open communications with our employees to determine what is your career path? How can Volunteers America assist you in your career path? How can we grow and expand services to give you opportunities to move up and level up, from your knowledge base? So we're being extremely intentional about it because it is our responsibility to ensure that the people who are out there delivering the services are geared up with the resources and knowledge and be able to lead for the future. So the DEI and the hiring practices, policy specific, no. Practice, absolutely. Because we want this to be a fluid process. We don't want any barriers from bureaucracy to say, well, we got a policy to say this, we can't do that. We want to be as nimble as possible in order to create that open pathway for anyone, female, male, anyone, to be able to access, becoming a leader for the organization for the future. But that was a great question, Dr. Adderley.
And I can speak for Boys Town. From a national perspective, DEI has definitely been a focus for our organization. One of the first things that came to the table was the organization of what we call employee resource groups. The first employee resource group was emerging leaders. So we definitely have a pathway and an avenue for employees across the country to get the professional development, the mentoring that they need to grow and develop. But we decided the next one definitely was going to be a Black employee resource group. I have some relationships, talking about those informal mentors. I have some relationships with some of the key executives at the national level, and I was volunteered to start the Black employee resource group. And what I love about these employee resource groups is it's definitely employee led, right? Even though I'm an executive director of Boys Town, Louisiana, we have representatives in our group from all levels of the organization. And then there's a leadership component to the organization, in that I'm the president, we have a vice president, and again, from direct care staff to administrative assistants, they all have leadership roles, and that's development in and of itself. What I also love about our ERGs, our employee resource groups, that is sponsored by a national executive, which means who has a seat at the table. So as we're in our spaces and we're having our conversations and our discussions and talking about the barriers or giving our ideas as far as how to make the organization more inclusive, that goes straight to our sponsor, and she has a seat at the table. And to the fact that how intentional we wanted it to be is that we even got to name our own groups. And so our ERG is a Black Organization for Leadership Development. So it's in the title. That is our focus. That is our mission. And so we have been responsible for putting on professional developments within our organization. We are talking about, how can we start a mentoring program? We're doing trainings on the importance of networking. So that's definitely, it's not necessarily right now a policy, but the culture is shifting and changing from the bottom up. And I think that's healthy. That's important, and we're able to get our concerns heard, and then that will lead to policy changes, we believe.
I'm attentive to time, so I'm gonna do a little bit of a mashup of two of the questions, I think. And I also didn't want us to fall into, they say that the problem with social media is that it's all overly positive. And I wanted to shift to the question that we'd sent in advance about fundraising, but I wanted to put a particular spin on it. One of the things that people often forget is that I lie. There are definitely people that come right out and be like, I don't want to listen to a women-run organization. I don't want to listen to a Black woman of all things, but they're going to come right out and say, I oppose you. I oppose your access. I oppose your leadership. I oppose the goals of your organization. But what people forget is most opponents, they kind of find these kind of halfway measures. So one of the things, this is Women's History Month, so I get to talk women's history. Like one of the things people forget about the struggle to get the right to vote, they're like, well, maybe women can vote for school board or for local things, but vote for Congress. And I wondered if we asked in the fundraising question to talk about your experience as a fundraiser for your organization, and particularly both successes and obstacles. And I'm wondering if you could look at that obstacles question in that kind of sense, where like I faced an obstacle in this circumstance because they were having some issue with like either my leadership or my approach, and also how you kind of overcame that. And sort of, and fundraising in some ways, that is one of the areas in which leaders are really called upon to speak for the organization and to ask people with their hands on money to respect your leadership. So, and I said, I will open it to anyone who wants to take it.
So I'm going to jump in because I think that one of the challenges that I've faced and this organization historically has faced has been that we provide assistance that is federally funded. And the perception that it's handouts or that you get enough money, it is not considered to be welfare. But when the numbers look up at the level of federal funding that we receive, we are not, donors have stayed away from individual donors to corporate donors. And so having to reposition the work, and I know Rashain understands this because I just finished having this conversation about the millage, is that we have to come up with a match for our federal dollars. And it has to be 25% of our award, and it cannot all be in kind. And so to be able to talk about the outcomes and yet be able to talk about the need for diversified donors, and I bring this up because if the men that preceded me were not able to crack that, the challenge is twice as hard as the first female in that position. And I had the opportunity from CNN to do a feature about the 2 streets of New Orleans, about how you could travel 1 block from St. Charles Avenue on Inside Man. And actually the interviewer asked me the question, have you ever had a fundraiser? And the organization had only had in its history 3 fundraisers, and each of them were in honor of a board chairman who was a political figure to raise dollars. And he sponsored a fundraiser at a millionaire's home on St. Charles Avenue and talked about the organization. And he actually taped it, and it ran on Inside Man. And it was unbelievably embarrassing because there's still that stereotype about the service that we're a human service, charity type organization, and not about the economic development, or that we were the first IDA in the city of New Orleans that mobilized people to start businesses or own homes. And so the challenges are not just a racial challenge, it is also about being in the human service sector. And so it's 3 times as hard because you have race, you're government funded, and then you're female. And so, I approach this like I approach everything else in life. This too shall come down, and we shall continuously work at it. But I wanted to bring that context that it is one of those things that you have to keep your eye on the prize and the reality. And yes, you build networks outside of your group, and to make sure that you get those doors open. And I think that is where I would like to.
I want to hear from others, but the students keep begging for reading. There is a ton of literature out there. Thelma French, thank you for bringing that up, about when they feminize human services and kind of, yeah, and just push aside all the development, and there, you know, and that's something that's just growing research on precisely this problem. But I want to hear from.
You're on mute.
Yeah, I said I want to hear from others as we're getting ready to wrap up.
Yeah, I would just like to add, you know, for Covenant House International, our federation, we are going through a process of shifting from a culture of charity to a culture of justice seeking. And I think that has really come about from some of the DEI work that we are doing as a federation that's being led by a Black woman who has been in the federation for over 30 years and who is the second generation. Her mother was a part of Covenant House International for years. And I think this is really important for us as executive directors and CEOs in an organization that is shifting their entire culture of raising money from charity to justice seeking, means that we have to shift the donor culture. And if we've had such a long lineage and we know the disparity of the state that we're in, the community that we're in, both local, greater New Orleans and the state, then recognizing that for us to shift from that charity and giving from, you know, the wealthy and very small percentage of our community to one that is seeking justice, there's so much work for us to do as an organization to shift that culture. But it's work that we have to do because we have to diversify who our donors are if we're going to shift that mentality. And if we're going to survive and sustain ourselves as an organization that primarily serves youth of color, at 88% of our youth are African-American youth from New Orleans. And so we have to be able to begin to have these conversations locally. We have to do a lot of work to cultivate new donors and bring in new audiences. And that's the only way that we're gonna, I think, overcome some of the obstacles that we faced historically around raising money. And as you know, women of color leaders, how we fundraise in communities like New Orleans. That's gonna be a really, really important obstacle for us to overcome.
We are right on 1:30, and I'm glad. I'm really delighted at the place that we've ended, because there is, and to expand Renisha's point, one of the things is worldwide, the consumers of the urgent services provided by nonprofits are women and children of color. That's, you know, so if you look in some ways, and I'm going to say this on Dr. Hayes knows that I'm a proto-socialist. I am less interested in who is running Fortune 500 companies. All right. And we are real good about paying attention to that realm of leadership for women. It's much more important if we think about women and children of color to look at changing the leadership cultures and the practices. And if we talk about diversification of leadership and really making something that's sustainable, who is consuming these services? And that is true in the United States, and it is true if you add up sort of youth in crisis, refugee populations, these kinds of, they are being consumed by women and children of color whose voices have, you know, are still sort of fighting to change that narrative. If I would say, for each of our panelists, if you could wrap up, we ran out of time for questions. About a quarter of the questions are people who are thinking themselves about their own nonprofit futures, either developing new ones. Is there one thing that you would say, be sure to do X, whether that's a professional development thing, you know, a thing that this is how I keep up. What would be your one takeaway? And that will be my kind of last question, because we had that very fat question, like, what do you do to keep up with all the things? So if there's one thing that you would hand to those audience members that are saying, whatever you do, remember to do X. And we can
Take
go back to our
ownership
original
for.
order. Yeah.
I was going to say one piece of advice: take ownership for your professional learning. Not depend upon anyone to create the space, create the information for you to be successful in your career. You have to be accountable for your pathway, and you have to be wise while you're traveling along that pathway. But self-learning, taking that responsibility and taking it to heart is vitally important, because you never stop learning, and when you choose to stop learning, you will choose to stop winning and leading into an environment of success. So that's important. I would say take that to heart. You know, your self-development is your responsibility and yours alone.
And following behind that point, and I think well said, Voris, is have a vision and make sure that your vision is a vision for yourself and the work that you do. I have my personal vision, and I make sure that my organization has a vision and that we share in that vision, and we can align our work to achieving that vision or working toward achieving that vision. So having a vision is really important to me for my accountability. I've got to be accountable for myself, but I need to know where it is I'm going.
And I would follow with saying that what I've learned working in human services, right? If you're looking at the human service arena, don't forget the humans. So you're accountable to your staff, taking care of your staff, ensuring that they're well taken care of, and taking care of the kids, the families, whatever humans that you're serving, like keep that in mind. When it comes to Boys Town, I think one of the questions, and I guess I'll allude to that, that I kind of reviewed, how do you stay connected to your client base? I have to sit with the kids and need and talk to them. I have to get out of my office, walk around and find out what's going on within my organization, what's going on with my families. That's what keeps me connected to my clients, and that helps me make the best decisions as a leader.
And I would just add to that, be kind to yourself. Self-care is important. Compassion fatigue is real. And doing work in social services and direct care and leading nonprofit organizations is hard work. We make a lot of sacrifices for what we do because we're called to action, we're called to lead. And we do that with a lot of passion. And I think you've heard that expressed from all of the women leaders on this call. So it's a constant reminder, and I rely on my colleagues here to make sure that I remind myself and that I'm taking good care of myself, because if I don't, then I won't be in a position to lead. And I won't be in a position to create pathways for others. So that's, I think, just as important as the work that we do, being focused on our communities, the people that we serve, and doing the work for those communities that we do, that we honor and that we take care of ourselves.
Thank you, everyone. Of course, this was not enough time. There was one more question, and I'll just read it. This was an inspiring panel, and I'm extremely proud of all of you. Have you all considered the possibility of formally creating an organization for Black women in nonprofit leadership? So that was just one of the suggestions. I must say I admire each of you. I thank each of you for attending this panel. Tulane University is doing its own EDI work as we speak, and I'm the president of the co-chair of the Empowering Change Task Force. And this is just one step of what we're trying to do to introduce the public to the fact that we have great women leaders and great Black women leaders. So thank you. Guys, to get your CEUs, you must complete the Qualtrics survey that will be sent to you in an email, and then Carrie will send you your certificate for your CEUs. Carrie, did I miss anything else?
Only that it might take a couple of weeks, a week or two, but we'll send the survey out no later than tomorrow, and the certificates will be, within 2 weeks from that.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Adderley. She always brings a great perspective to the work that we do. Our next health spot will not be in May. The next health spot will be, our next health spot will be in April, and it will be coordinated by our Tulane SGA. So more information to follow. Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.